Thank you very much, and I'm very honored and happy to be here with the delegation. I recognize a lot of friendly faces and very familiar people here, and a lot of potential new friends. I mean, we will be debriefed about Rush and the whole initiative by the two co-chairs. But I think what's important to me to convey as well, on top of Rush and this cooperation between high schools, universities, research centers, and so on, it's about exchanging more between our students. And both of you are, I mean, you had a PhD, if I understood properly. You did a PhD as well. But it's very important for us to welcome more Indian students and to have more French students coming here. We speak about 10,000 per year, more or less. It depends on the season. Sometimes people tell me it's 9,300. Sometimes my ambassador told me it's 11,000. So it should be around 10,000 per year. Okay. We decided with Prime Minister Modi to have 30,000 by 2030. It's largely feasible. Largely feasible. On the French side, we have to simplify, and we will simplify, our sourcing, and as well as a visa facility. To have a visa which, I mean, meets the expectation of the students and is appropriate. For instance, if you have a PhD, I don't know how many years it took for you, 3 years, so many. So if I give you a visa for 1 year, I'm a little bit crazy. I create a sort of uncertainty, and probably we deliver the visa for 1 year, and you have to renew it, and so on. So it's not optimal. So on the French side, we will clearly streamline this approach in order to have something which meets the expectations and is much more practicable for the students and the schools. And by Rush, precisely, we will establish better connections in order to have a better sourcing. Because India, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, was not the number one source of students. Let's be honest. So I want our universities and high school to do much more, but we will do as well much more in terms of administrative facilities. At the same time, I want all the Indian students to be sure that if you come to France, you have the best-in-class teaching, you have access to the research centers, and exactly the ecosystem you mentioned. With a lot of interdisciplinarity. You have, I mean, if you study in AI, you can have both, obviously, data scientists, mathematicians. You can have fundamental research with clearly the interaction with startups. But you can have as well interdisciplinarity with philosophy and other disciplines, because it's super important to have the model of AI we do believe in. And this is exactly what we have on our campus. And I want you to be sure that you can have all your different lessons, your approach, in English. Because I know that sometimes they're still exchanging with a lot of students. They say, I will not join France. I don't have a sufficient level in French language. No. You can come for a PhD, even for a master degree, and you will be teaching French. In English, sorry. Obviously, you can learn French in parallel. But you will be educated and you will have all the facilities in English. And it's very important to have that in mind, to convey to all the students here in India that we do have these facilities and this access. And my last point, because sometimes there is a source of misunderstandings, I'm making my pitch for attracting more Indian students, as you see. It's a strange argument, but in France, the costs of studies is largely less expensive than in a lot of other countries. It's not the signal, it's bad quality. I'm serious. I had a lot of students saying, okay, it's almost for zero. It should be a terrible level of quality. Because everywhere in the rest of the world, you have to pay a lot of money to have 1 year. It's our, I would say, collective choice in France. The taxpayer contributes much more than the student. It's more fair. You can have some contributions are non-French students, but it's much more limited than in the equivalent Anglo-Saxon universities. So we can ask for some fees. It depends, and I think it's good that each university and each high school has its own model and will be free to have its own model. But we are very far from the level of fees in the Anglo-Saxon universities. But just take it as a collective choice, but not a signal that there is a lower quality. It's not true at all. The government is paying for the difference. This is my clarification after several interactions with students. So I clearly invite much more Indian students to come at master or develop for a PhD and to share the experience you had, because I really believe that we can provide a unique experience, and you pitched France much better than I could do.
I hope some of the students sitting behind us got convinced. And thank you. We're going to count how many of you we take back in the plane. Great. Thank you, Mr. President. I mean, obviously, this is the AI Impact Summit, and everything we shared is particularly true when it comes to AI. Because, as you rightly said, one of the reasons you came to France is because you have such an interdisciplinary approach. And when we think about AI, there's probably not single technology that is so interdisciplinary. So this week is the AI Impact Summit. And I think we had discussions here today, but all around the city about how AI is a technology that basically we only get probably once a century. That changes everything, from the way we learn, from the way we get informed, from the way we cure disease. We're in one of the most prestigious hospitals here. It changes the way we interact. It changes the way we access information. And as such, it can only be dealt when we bring a lot of different stakeholders in one room. And that's what we're doing with the AI Summit we did in Paris and that India is doing now. When you're thinking about AI, and you both work in AI, and I know you have this idea in mind on where you want to bring AI, and this is something we concretely share with our Indian friends. This is too much of an important technology to just be developed in the hands of a few companies. We need to think how we develop it with public good interest. And I know you both care about this topic very much. So maybe starting with Manan, based on your work, what would be your advice to this room, scientists here, but also people from the government, people from all around the world who are gathered in Delhi, to make sure that we continue trying and pushing AI in the interest of public good, which was a key theme of our AI Paris Summit as well.
Sure. So, we can just talk endlessly about AI, but I'll focus more on, something which is relevant for this discourse. So we have to see that as AI matures, as it becomes more and more useful, it will be adopted more. It will be consumed more. And if it is being consumed more and we are really serious about its social good, then it has to become more sustainable. It has to become more energy efficient. It has to become more green. So that is something that, at least in our work, we try to closely focus on, because we work on things like next forms of computing, semiconductor devices which take less energy. So, neuromorphic computing, bio-inspired computing. The essence here is that we need to cut down the power budget or the energy budget that AI systems consume. And I think, at least in the Indo-French context, this has a lot of relevance because both countries have strong commitment to AI for the wider good and also for sustainability. And, with our French partners, we are working extensively on building low energy AI systems. The work is quite complementary, just how the cultures are complementary. They work more on new materials. We work more on building systems with those materials or algorithms with those materials which are more energy efficient. So if you ask me to summarize, I would say that sustainable AI or getting the AI systems to be more green, more sustainable is what would make it enduring and what it would take to much larger scale of impact.
And what we can do together.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Priyanka, do you want to add up to that topic as well?
Yes, thank you for the question. And just to add to Manan, so AI for good, because AI, let's be honest, it's machine learning and among other forms of training data. And at the base, it's very, very technical. So it might actually scare people. So we need some mechanisms that, on one side, you're able to destigmatize this fear of technology and people not knowing what is behind. Even for us scientists, sometimes we're like, okay, what's behind this model, you know? And so on the sustainability aspect, it's also, we are training large amounts of data, but is it better to, you know, focus on certain aspects, and that really depends on regulatory access, you know, to the different data sets that we have. For example, we work on flood early warning systems, and I'm heading international strategy for this company. And so when we are doing transboundary training, how do we get access to that data? Even if we cross-collaborate with research teams, so we require the help of policymakers to you know, make sure that the access to that data is fluid, so that we have more parameters that can help us with that training.
Thank you. Manan, you're also a professor of AI on your students. Could you build a bit on that as well?
Yeah. So again, you know, especially for academic pedagogy, it's like an inflection point with the LLMs, the GPTs, the agentic systems. It's like a never seen before situation, you know, and many things are not clear. We don't want to jump into stifling innovation before the systems mature, because we have to make sure that even the innovation is there. But you know, the way I like to look at it is not in a negative sense, but it's really a beast which needs to be tamed both by the teachers and the students, you know, for more efficiency, more productivity. At the same time, we need to protect the demographics. You know, the session before spoke about the child protection, so we need to take care of the demographics. But yeah, I mean, there are n number of things, whether, you know, students can use agents in an examination, whether teachers can design a question paper with an agentic AI, or whether you can replace the classroom teacher with an avatar of a instructor. So there are many gray areas, but we need to ride this tide, and we need to really be able to tame. Both students and the teachers need to tame this technology for the wider good.
Thank you. So you talked about sustainability, data access that led us to teaching, and you mentioned it, kids. In the session before with Minister Lehenhoff, we had a great discussion on what should we do with those tools when it comes to younger generation? Because obviously the students you have in your classroom, they're probably not handling the aspects of those technology as well as younger generation, younger students, or actually not students at all, because younger and younger age, people are interacting with AI through so many different forms, but in particular with chatbots. And those chatbots, they converse, they engage with you, sometimes they get in your intimacy, and it has so much consequences on younger people. Professor Worms earlier today said, we were discussing how this can only be solved again as a global multi-stakeholder issue, and he said, that's probably a good example of sometimes with your partners, you can't rely on every definition of what's the best, but you can align and agree on what's the worst. And the worst on AI chatbots and children is probably a scenario we've already seen unfold in front of our eyes when we think of social networks. So how do we come together and address this issue before it has the impact it has had with social network? It's something we discussed earlier with the minister to discuss about the need for global expertise, the need for standards, the need for tools, building tools also that will get this technology in a very positive way for children without harming them in a way that we can only see, you know, unfolding now in front of our eyes. So I'm glad you raised this question. We don't necessarily have all the answers, but I think seeing a global community taking that as one of the aspects we want to move forward is extremely important. And I know it's important to you, Mr. President. So maybe with all those topics, sustainability, data access, the ability to connect with education, but also to protect the younger generation, how do you think we should advance this conversation on AI and public good?
Thank you. I think the summit organized tomorrow by India is extremely important regarding all these issues. And after our action summit 1 year ago, we followed the conversation in order to have, I mean, to try to make sure that our countries benefit from the innovation, but to make sure as well that this innovation will be at the service of our common goods and our humanity. And I think it's as important as allowing the innovation to be part of our countries. I really believe that we have the same obsession both in India and in France, I would say, and in Europe, which is that we don't want to be dependent on a totally US or a totally Chinese model, but we really believe that we need a broader one, and we want to be part of the solutions, and we want to have players being part of the solutions. So you perfectly described what is at stake. What we want to do is to make sure that we have the data centers and the computing capacities, that we train the talents in our countries, that we have all the capacities, and it's clearly about computing capacities, talents, and capital. Here are the three elements. And I mean, when I speak about computing capacities, it's about having affordable, or at least competitive, low-carbon energy in order to deliver this agenda. On this agenda, I really believe we have a lot of assets, and we are in the race. We are lagging behind both US and China, but we are in the race. Now the question is, on the downstream side, how to accelerate adoption. And you mentioned it, both of you. And adoption is critical. Why? Because it's how to make sure, sector by sector, with the right ethical approach, AI will be adopted and transform your productivity, will allow you to discover new disease, to completely change your energy model, to be much more productive. And this is one of the only way, clearly, to see the consequences of AI in the statistics, and to avoid a well-known paradox where AI can be seen as a wonderful innovation, but without a lot of impact. So adoption is absolutely critical. But when we speak about adoption, we speak about the speed, the depth of this adoption, but as well how the key players of each sector are familiar with AI in order to make it, to transform AI solutions and technological solutions at the service of their objective, and not something which will completely and just disrupt their approach. And this is exactly what we want to do, especially in the healthcare sector, and we will have the occasion a little bit later today to illustrate this transformation. It's true on space, it's true on energy, and so on. On the other side, you mentioned frugality. I think the way we want to be part of this race and this global competition is slightly different. When we speak about data, when we speak about energy, I think both India and France do consider that we can do it in a different way. The hyperscalers are organizing this approach. This is why when we speak about large language model, with Mistral AI, we adopted a much more frugal approach. What Yann Lequin is building, by the way, in France, and we are very proud of that, leaving Meta, is clearly another approach to modelize OAI, which is much more frugal. And India was one of the rare countries to choose small language models as well, based on this frugality and to be much more targeted. And I think we're right, because otherwise you can see that this race is already unsustainable by itself. Having these hyperscalers buying and building or booking for huge data centers everywhere in the world, most of them don't have any access to energy. Most of them, even in the US, don't have energy, and none of them have a clean energy. I mean, it's not sustainable even on the midterm. So I really believe that our common approach makes much more sense, but we have to clearly bridge the gap at the same way. But the alliance and the partnership between both of us makes a lot of sense. My last point is about the fact that we really believe, both India and France, in an AI at the service of our humanity. Meaning we are ready to put regulations. And I want just to mention three examples of that. The first one was largely developed, is about childhood. It's clear that in the system today, something is rotten, and look at the situation of our children, our teenagers. When you speak about social media, if you add to this social media some chat box with agentic capacities, I mean, this is the beginning of a terrible situation. And we already have all the symptoms of the situation. So we have to protect our childhood, and we are aligned on that. Second, we are in favor of transparency. And one of the key achievements of of this summit is to have to ask requests from, perhaps at the end of the day, force these hyperscalers to provide the full transparency on their algorithm. And I think it's extremely important. It's important for our researchers, but it's very important for all of us as citizens. Because all the algorithms have biases. We know that. There is no doubt. And they are so impactful when you speak about social media that having just no clue about how the algorithm is made, how it is tested, how it is trained, and where it will guide you, I mean, the democratic consequences of this bias could be huge. We don't ask for regulation by itself. We don't want the IP. But we say, I mean, just should make it transparent. You are for the free speech. Some of them claim to be in favor of free speech. Okay, we are in favor of free algorithm.